Hey everyone, welcome to the Not a Lonely Coffee Break podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Maddie.
And I'm Megan. We're a podcast about coffee and work, but make it queer.
So much has happened since our hiatus, but also even just since our last episode.
Oh,
Things have just
yeah.
been wild,
Like, whoa. And January.
right?
Wowzers. Yeah, I
Right?
agree.
In the 800 days of January.
Yeah, yeah, it feels like I definitely have aged a couple years this month just with everything going.
It's wild. Like, where do we even start? But I think the great starting point is this. Did you survive the weather this past week?
No, we fared out okay. It was just ice where I am. It was just ice pellets. So we ended up getting like a sheet of ice everywhere, at least 3 inches thick. But thankfully, power stayed on. We had a lot of trauma from the last Snowmageddon, and so I prepped. I made sure I had 3 sources to cook food just in case. Worst case scenario, I will make a fire. And no, and then I just tried taking pictures of my 12-year-old dog who really doesn't like to take pictures anymore because she's an old lady. She's
She
like,
looked so cute
why?
though. She looked cute in her little hoodie. I saw the pictures.
Yeah, I love her little hoodie. But
Yeah.
but she loves her hoodie too. She wouldn't want to take it off. So I was like, you know what, this works because I don't want to spend $1 million on heating this house. So you're gonna wear this sweater. I'm gonna wear my sweater. So no, we
Yeah.
survived. What about y'all?
Yeah, we survived as well. We felt decently prepared. We probably could have done better in terms of food prepping, but we did okay. And I didn't put them in cute hoodies, but I did every time my dogs went outside, they did have to wear their jacket. So that was fun. And then my boxer, he sometimes gets the zoomies at night. And so one night, because we had just been cooped up, snuggled up on the couch, bundled up in blankets, trying to stay warm. But he got the zoomies. So he goes outside and he starts running. But because the ground is solid
Oh,
ice, it turned into kind of him learning to skate. He was kind of sliding, sliding
yes.
zoomies. But yeah, no, the stores were cleared out.
Yeah.
Schools were canceled. Workplaces were saying, don't come in. We were all just sitting at home wishing that Netflix would drop the new season of Bridgerton early. So we all had something to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't know, Megan, do you think the hype was worth it? Or did we overreact because of the trauma from a few years ago?
I think the reaction was on par. Because also, what is it, ERCOT, the electricity people?
Yay. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, we're going to do just fine. Everything's fine. And then, like, the day before, they're like, but we might have rolling blackouts. And I'm like, y'all just need to do your job. Okay? Just keep my power on. No, I think we had a fine reaction. Of course, I think the whole, buying out all the bread and milk and eggs, I think is a little,
It
if
was a bit
anything, y'all should be getting
much.
frozen food to keep frozen outside. But no, I think it was fine. One of the weird things though is that I did see, I was at CVS and like all the allergy medicine was gone. And I was like, is there an
It's because
allergy medicine
yes,
shortage?
it's because everyone has allergies right
It's
now.
wild.
Um, but no, I agree. I think the reactions were appropriate. The only beef that I have is actually with I guess it's the state. I don't know.
Whoever you are.
Whoever decides to put out the weather alerts on your phones. I was getting alerts on my phone about urgent, severe winter weather a week before it hit at inappropriate times. I don't think that you need to notify me at 4 a.m. on Tuesday that there's gonna be bad weather on Friday.
It sounds like
That's an
they're on the East
inappropriate time.
Coast.
Yeah, that's an inappropriate time for you to be messaging me about something that's coming up.
Yeah, it'll be.
So that was my only beef, was that I did feel like I was getting way too many alerts telling me that it was coming. And I was like, I just needed to be here. I know
That's
that
how
it's
I
coming.
felt. Yeah. I'm just like standing outside, like at my window, just patiently, like just looking. Are we
I did.
here
Yeah.
yet? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. For sure. But
I'm glad
okay.
you
Well,
did it.
yay. Listeners, we hope that you all survived. The Great Dalaska of 2026.
We just getting more
Um,
creative with these names.
I know. If you did anything fun, let us know. Share your stories of the freeze. How did you pass the time with your loved ones? But okay, let's go ahead and get into a deep dive for today. I want to talk about something that's been coming up a little bit in DFW. Some of you might be familiar with this story, but there was a story this week about White Rhino Coffee, a local chain. They have about 15 locations in the DFW area. And I also learned this about them. The owners also own Emporium Pies, which has a few locations in the DFW area. But there was a former manager who claimed the company was encouraging ICE agents to use their first responder discount, which of course sparked public backlash and forced
Mhm.
the company to clarify their stance on social media that the discount only applies to local first responders and emphasize inclusivity. So, I thought with the great ice of 2020, we would kind of talk about this a little bit. So, Megan, what are your thoughts on this current event?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a perfect example of like how our perception of a political stance like creates controversy. And even if a company would say like, hey, it's not our intent to be like choosing a side or whatnot, I've been really thinking about how this might impact communities or how people, especially because it feels like every week
Mhm.
there's something new going on about a
Mhm.
company, either saying something or intentionally not saying something about something political or social that might be happening. So, I'm just like really at that point, I'm like, okay, when are businesses really going to decide, or are they
Mhm.
not? What is that going to look like?
No, yeah, and I feel like at this point it does feel like it's unavoidable.
Yeah.
We're not here today's episode is not here to debate whether or not a company should support a specific movement or
Right.
policy, but we do want to discuss and talk about do a little bit of digging into what actually happens when those companies take a public stance and what
Hmm.
might happen when they don't.
Yeah. And like right now, the silence can be
Mhm.
deafening, to a lot of different
Yeah.
groups. And it can be just interpreted as a like, well, if you say nothing, then it means you're on their side or another
Mhm.
side, you know? But there's this
Mhm.
idea that businesses need to stay neutral. A lot of
Yeah.
finance and business
Mhm.
people, they say like, hey,
Mhm.
just stay out of it. That's the best thing to do, not to make anyone upset. But that's not
Mhm.
really the world we're really living in anymore.
I think back in the day, yeah, that idea of businesses being more neutral, that was kind of the standard, but we absolutely are in a different world now.
Hmm.
And I do think that that in part is because of social media. What used to be things that happened kind of in boardrooms or those closed door decisions, it now plays out in real time on Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, whatever platform it is. And consumers, employees, other businesses are watching to see how you respond.
Hmm. You know, and while I was thinking about this, I was curious like what's out there, what the
Mhm.
research is. And they have this barometer, the Eldman Trust Barometer, which says that roughly 6 in 10 customers say that they choose, avoid, or boycott brands based on the company's values or beliefs. That's a lot.
Mhm.
60%, right? 60% of
Mhm.
people are saying that they
Yeah.
will consciously make a decision based on their position in something. And that's not fringe, that's not just, it's not just a small group of people who are activists. This is mainstream
Yeah.
behavior. It's all over Instagram. It's all over TikTok.
Mhm.
It's getting reposted. You have celebrities talking about it.
Oh, yeah.
So this is just, it's becoming more mainstream and which like, it's almost like a transparency issue.
Mhm. Absolutely. And it's not just customers, it's also employees. Honestly, especially those younger workers. Surveys consistently show that Gen Z and millennials have an expectation that their employers at least acknowledge social issues that are going to affect their lives and respond accordingly. So being
Yeah.
aware of what's going on and then not ignoring it.
Yeah. I think it's really easy to assume that companies will speak out just to meet their
Mhm.
PR standards, just to say that they said something or did something. But in reality, there's a lot of different reasons. We can go back to 2020 with the Black Lives Matter movement and the George Floyd murder. That was, I think, one of the first times that I can think of where all these different, social media, the news, the cycle, the news
Mhm.
cycle, not just the 24-hour news cycle, not just Instagram, not just Facebook, but TikTok was like pushing out info. So people
Mhm.
were like,
Mhm.
this was the first time that like I was even saying to my workplace, hey, we have to say something because if we don't say something, it means that like we're behind, that nothing wrong
Mhm.
happened here. Right.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so that we had to come out and say, yes, there's racial discrimination, there's injustice, and aligning with our own values. So, at the time where I was at, I didn't think it was dangerous because it did align with our values, but it was something that was like, hey, this is happening now. There are a lot of people seeing this. If we don't
Mhm.
say something, it's gonna come back to us later.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
A fun fact, Megan and I actually worked together during that time frame.
Yeah.
There was a I was it was there was a little bit of overlap between where I worked previously
Mhm.
and this one, but I do remember Megan having conversations about what kind of statement we wanted to put out,
Mhm.
how we wanted to phrase it to ensure that it aligned with our visions and purpose
Mhm.
and our values, but also the values of the organization we were with at the time. We didn't
Mhm.
want it to just feel out of place. We wanted it to be intentional. So I do remember those conversations. And that's such a great example because that was one of the first times I too kind of remember seeing the public really push for businesses to take a stance
Yeah.
on things
And it
and
wasn't an easy
determine.
conversation. No.
No, it wasn't. No, there was
Yeah.
a lot of back and forth, just ensuring that we had the right message to put out. And
Mhm.
I know a lot of businesses struggled with that on where they wanted to step up, where they what they wanted to say, how they wanted to say it, all of it. But that was I mean, I know it's not the first time, but I just remember that being the first time, I guess, in my professional timeline
Mhm.
that there was a big push for looking to see what businesses were saying and determining if that's where I wanted to send my money to
Right.
on the consumer side. So, but we also know it's rarely just one thing, right? Sometimes on what it equals, those hard conversations, right? Sometimes it's leadership values. A CEO or founder generally believes something and so they feel responsible to say something
Yeah.
out loud. Sometimes it could be internal pressure where employees are saying they're gonna organize walkouts, petitions, internal pressures demanding that they address things like racial injustice, immigration, human rights, all of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Consumer pressure is a tactic, for these movements and like a lot for advocacy movements. I was actually speaking with a friend recently about this. And, ultimately, as people become more aware of the issues in their own community, right? Because then,
Mhm.
like, we'll just use the, George Floyd murder and Black Lives Matter movement as an example. Yes, that did happen in another state, in another city, but they realized like, hey, this is something like this became national news, but this is something that happens in our own communities, And so people become more aware of their community, educating
Mhm.
themselves, and then they get more and more involved and influenced. And then they're like, well, what are our businesses doing?
Mhm.
Well, are these brands supporting these types of behavior? Are they not? And if they're not saying anything, like I have to come to the assumption of that, right? Brands know that not responding can definitely trigger backlash just as fast as saying the wrong thing, So
Mhm.
they do have to strategize that and kind of see like, okay, well, where do we fall? And that's why mission and values is so important. But that's where the line between authentic values and reactive PR really gets blurry and messy when we see that
Mhm.
and we're like, well, and in the last year, there's been a big push for business and finances you're seeing not to chime in on these issues. You've seen that in this administration, like, hey, cut it out, we're not going to want you to do anything on social issues because it's not financially wise.
Well, unless I
Oh,
think we're also seeing that whole it's a double-edged sword because we are seeing on one hand, yet don't talk about it.
mhm,
But on the other hand, we're also seeing a push for, well, it's okay for you to talk about it as long as it aligns with the message that we're putting out,
mhm,
right? As long as you're on the side of this administration,
right.
talk away. As long as you're saying the message that we approve,
Yes,
you're good to go.
right.
And we'll make sure that you get the money that you need.
Right. And these, and as a consumer, I start asking the question, okay, well, if you're no longer going to be invested in my community or the issues in my community, like, why
Mhm.
am I going to invest in you?
Mhm.
That's to be determined.
No, absolutely. But let's talk about maybe the upside to some of this because we do see that companies keep doing this for a reason,
Right.
for sure.
Yeah. I mean, because when it works, it really works,
Mhm.
and taking a clear stance and being clear and concise on what that message is and how it aligns with what you're doing or even the leadership you want to display as, we're talking about huge corporations, but we were talking about, White Rhino. And it's like they made a decision and they were like, yeah, this seems fine.
Mhm.
But they probably didn't do much research on it, like on their own market, what type of backlash they could have gotten and things like that. Because it probably seemed minor to some people, but for a lot of people,
Mhm.
this is a huge issue. It's a
Mhm.
life-changing, life-threatening issue. So,
Mhm.
but when you can create a message that really falls in line with your consumer base and shows that it is authentic, it works
Mhm.
perfectly and you'll create loyalty. People
Mhm.
that no longer just buy because it's
Yeah.
convenient, but people that are just like, you know what? Heck yeah, I'm going to travel an extra 5-10 minutes to you because I
Mhm.
enjoy what you're doing. I enjoy what you said and you have great products, whatever it might be.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. I also think that it improves employee engagement
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of times your employees, at least in some of these smaller companies where we're seeing a lot of the discord happening right now, like your employees are also your consumers. They're
Right.
also messengers of your company. So if you are putting out a message that they can get behind and they can feel like it aligns with who they are as the consumer, as the person, then they're gonna be more likely to stay at those companies because they
Mm-hmm.
feel like there's a shared values and they feel like their voices were even heard a little bit because it's not just the leadership saying all these things, but they're also kind of putting it into action by saying they're not just saying like behind closed doors, well, yeah, we care about human rights. They're
Mm-hmm.
actually putting out statements and saying, no, we care about human rights.
Right. Right.
And here's how we're going to show up as a company to ensure that everyone feels welcomed
Mm-hmm.
in our place of business.
Right. And also it can offer like a sense of safety. It's not,
Mhm.
if we're going to be talking about ice, it wasn't in the very beginning, they were going into stores, they were going into restaurants,
Yeah, they
and
still
so
are.
and they still are,
They still are.
they still are. They're just like barging in, and so when you no longer feel safe, then I'm like, well, I'm not going to sit in this restaurant if I think my dinner's going to be interrupted because I might be
Mhm.
questioned about my
Mhm.
citizenship.
Mhm.
I'm not going to go there anymore. And same
Mhm.
thing for the employee. If the employee doesn't feel safe, that you're not going to protect them if they starting being questioned when they legally can be there, then why are
Mhm.
they going to work at your company?
Right. And I have seen online, and things we see online are not always the truth.
Mhm.
But I have seen people posting online about themselves or someone they know that they worked with that was terminated from the my job, and then also that place of employment after they finished their shift and then they fired them, they also called ICE
Oh
to
my
meet them in the parking
lordy.
lot. And so it's kind of like, yeah, I didn't wanna be a part of you anyway, but now you've also jeopardized my livelihood by removing my job and calling ice when I'm a person, first of all, and
Mhm.
I'm also here legally,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
just called ICE because you didn't like me.
That's wild sauce. Yeah. No, it's yeah, and it's becoming, white rhino was not the first thing, that I
Oh,
saw.
no. No.
I've seen other small businesses come out and say things. The bigger ones, I really haven't heard from. But,
Mhm.
when you get that deeper loyalty within the small group, you're not going to get that broader appeal. It's
Mhm.
less everyone likes us and it's just like we only want the right people to like us, and
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
sounds pretty freaking terrible,
Mm,
and I
yeah.
wouldn't wanna be there.
So this is where things can sometimes get a little complicated because yes, taking the same stance that builds loyalty with one group can sometimes alienate another group. Now, in terms of what's going on right now, you might be thinking, okay, well, if they are wanting to support people who are snatching people from homes and murdering people in broad daylight, then yeah, we don't want their business anyway. But that's not the only thing that companies are taking stances on, right? There are other things sometimes that they take stances on that could perhaps alienate certain groups of people. So I know someone
Mhm,
that during the height of some of the Black Lives Matter movements, they were getting a lot of pressure from their community to make a statement. Um, and they were a small business. They also served people who were members of law enforcement
mhm,
and
mhm.
so as a business owner, this person decided not to post a statement. They tried to kind of take that neutrality approach of just, I don't want to make a statement that's going to alienate a large percentage of my other group. But that does not mean that I don't care about my Black customer base
Right.
and want to ensure that their voices are heard. And they did try to host, some kind of focus groups where people could share some of their thoughts or whatever, but at the end of all of it, they did face significant backlash and ended up losing a lot of their minority population
Mm,
of
mhm.
customers because they chose not to take that stance in support of Black Lives Matter.
Yeah,
And people were bad-mouthing them in the town that they live in and all sorts of stuff. And on one
oh,
hand,
wow.
on one hand, I'm like, I don't understand why you couldn't just make a statement. Like,
Yeah.
why couldn't you just come out in support of Black Lives Matter?
Mhm.
And you could have worked with someone to craft it in a way like,
Yes.
that's what allyship is, right? You could have crafted it in a way that maybe helped you not feel like you were alienating this other group of people by making
Uh-huh.
a statement.
Yeah.
But I also understand that why they wanted to perhaps not make a statement because they didn't want to risk alienating this other group
Right.
of people who might have received it a certain way.
Mhm.
And so it's kind of it's a double-edged sword because if you don't make a statement the right way, then yeah, it can have some of those unintended consequences when you are truly aiming to be inclusive to all
Yeah.
people.
And people remember. I think it's a good example of what, like, managers or like, small business people face.
Mhm.
Because a lot of times small businesses, like, they get into this crisis mode and
Mhm.
they don't know how to respond. They don't know what to do. So if they don't have the skill set to respond in a certain way, they definitely need to lean on like communications professionals that like manage risk communication so that they can craft a message that aligns best with their company. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that she does have a response, even if it's a non-response, but at least she has something. I have worked with people where they think that they're making the right decision because they feel like they know their customer base, but they don't have any research or experience on how to deal with this
Mhm.
type of situation. It may be the first time
Mhm.
they're ever dealing with it, like needing to lean
Mhm.
on your communications people, on your marketing people, on people that like, even if you need a
Mhm.
consultation and just say, hey, like, this is what I'm facing, they're going to help you because that's literally what they're trained to do,
Mhm.
is to
Mhm.
align your message with what's best for your consumer base, but also align it with your values, you know?
Mhm. No, absolutely.
Typically, business owners are not writers. Okay. So,
No, we
I
all
mean,
well, we all bring a different skill we all bring a
yeah.
different knowledge and skill set, but that's also, I think, why it's so important to make sure that we diversify
Mhm.
within our
Our
employee
workplace.
base, our
Yep.
workplace, because that could be an opportunity for you to go to someone who's part of a certain community that's experiencing impact of a current social issue
Yeah.
or an ongoing social issue and welcome them to the table and just
Mhm.
say, "We wanna invite you for a conversation.
I need your insight, you
We
know?
need your insight to help us craft a message that we feel like can align with your community, but also our company at the
Right.
same time, and
Exactly.
the customers that are gonna be coming into our business."
Mhm. Yeah, because I mean, at the same time, it is that double-edged sword because, let's just say we're selling coffee, I am not a law enforcement specialist. I don't know a lot of
Mm,
research. I know what my community wants, and I know I want
mhm,
people and my customers, my community to be safe. But
mhm.
I don't need to be making statements on what law enforcement should be doing. I need to be making statements of how do I make my customers and my people feel safe.
Yeah,
That's it, you know, and
right.
and that's it. And like if everyone's saying I don't feel safe right now and not safe enough to come and spend money in my business, there's a problem.
Mhm, mhm,
So, and I have encountered a lot of leaders where they want to rely on their own point of view and their own vision,
mhm,
which I get because
mhm.
this business is your baby, but sometimes you've got to lean on other people and their talents. And like you
Mhm.
said, that's why it does create an opportunity to have a diverse workforce because you do have lots of people who have all sorts of different experiences who can give you
Yeah,
some insight on how to react.
absolutely. Because we have seen companies lose customers overnight, face
Mhm.
boycotts, and get dragged into news cycles that they never intended to be a part of, and they might just be simply trying to survive a nasty economy.
Yeah.
And maybe they felt like trying to stay neutral or just make it day by day was what that took, but then, of course, they faced the backlash of, "Well, you didn't say anything," or "You said the wrong thing." So, it can create a lot of internal fallout when a company takes a strong public stance that not everyone is gonna agree on, because it can create all those tensions, resentment, all sorts of stuff.
Right. Yeah. And, there is performative activism,
Oh my
especially with
gosh, yes.
like, we can't discount that, right? Like posting a statement without changing your policies, without practicing good pay practices or good employee practices, partnerships, and all of that can just damage trust, if you're not doing it
Mhm.
right. Like, we obviously saw this with Target, you know?
Yeah.
Everyone freaking loved Target, right? Bad. Like, they were
Mhm.
spending way too much money there. They said it every time we
Mhm.
walked in. And Target was on the LGBTQ side. They were celebrating Pride for several years. I don't know how long. It was several years, and they were out about it. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, they get pressure from government administration. Any government administration shouldn't be pressuring businesses, right? If you guys
Mhm.
want free enterprise, I'm just saying. But
Mhm.
they're pulling out of Pride. They're no longer investing in DEI practices or like making sure that they're having a
Mhm.
diverse workforce and being inclusive. It rubbed everyone and then like the worst way.
Mhm.
And so they're going to pull back their stance and we're like, "Okay, well obviously you were just doing it for our money." And
Yeah.
that's not what consumers want to hear. Even though yes, the
Mhm.
main purpose of a business is to generate money, profit, but if you're going to you have to have that sweet spot. You have to. Everyone's got to work it. And if you're going to invest in like doing all this stuff and saying, hey, we're committed and making sure this community feels safe, you can't pull back on that and say, well, actually, we don't agree with this anymore.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it definitely backlashed on them. Like, why should I invest in you if you're not going to invest in us? Right.
Right.
Yeah.
No, actions speak louder than words, and I think that's how you can really determine if something sometimes is more performative is, okay, so you put out a statement. Now what kind of behavior are you changing? Because I think that's the part that a lot of people underestimate is We might be, like, cheering them on because they've posted a statement on social media, but have they actually changed their behaviors? What's going
Mhm.
on inside of the workplace?
Yeah.
And is that something that we as the consumers can continue to get behind?
Right. And you can support inclusion without like requiring a political agreement. Like you don't have to come out and say we're with this party, with that party.
Mhm,
We're talking about inclusion. We're talking about just making people feel safe and valued, which is
mhm,
something a company or a business should be doing anyway. But when, the company values start to feel like a personal litmus test, your people, your employees are going to shut down. They're going to be like, well, if they don't really care much about me because I'm not one of them, productivity is going to go down, like we talked about. And they're just going to well, I'm just here so I don't get fined. I'm just here
yeah,
to get the
mhm,
paycheck and go home.
mhm,
And for a lot of employers, that's quiet quitting, right? Like
mhm,
that's not something they're feeling that their employees no longer invested in them. But that's the reaction and that's
mhm.
that's the consequence of doing that, you know?
No, yeah, absolutely. A healthy workplace doesn't require sameness.
Mhm.
It requires respect. Are you setting up a situation where everyone feels respected?
Yeah.
So the real challenge is, how do you create a culture where people feel safe and included without feeling ideologically boxed in? And is your company leading with values, or are you responding to fear? I think is kind of what the gist of our conversation boils down to.
Mm, yeah. And if you're a leader listening, I think there's a few hard questions that matter more than the statement itself. Is this aligned with our core mission or are we reacting to the moment? And just making sure that whatever you do, just make sure you're leaning on the right people to make that decision because it is going to backlash on you. I mean, there's always going to be a response, whether it's going to be positive or negative. You're always going to have a response. You just want to do what's best for your specific business. Also, we got to be prepared for that disagreement externally, internally. What does that look like? How are we going to respond to our employees? Making sure that you have like a complete strategy, right? A lot of people that go through crisis comms, it's not just like, oh, we're gonna make a statement and that's done. Like it's supposed to be okay. This week we're gonna do this. This week we're gonna do that. This week we're gonna do that. It is a strategy. And if you think that just waking up one night, putting out an email or a social media post is gonna solve your issue, it's not. And just making sure that if you do make that statement, follow through. Right? Follow through is going to be the biggest thing. And that's going to be the only thing that's going to garner trust with consumers that are watching, that are paying attention. And right now is going to be the time where everyone is paying attention. And really,
Absolutely.
yeah, and really the toughest one is like, who are we going to exclude? If we're going to be making this statement, who are we excluding and how can we tackle that?
Mhm,
There's a will, there's a way. I promise you there's an
mhm,
answer to everything. But again, if you can't answer those questions, lean on professionals that can. Lean on people that
mhm,
can offer you that insight, diversify your mastermind group. That's what I like to call it.
mhm.
And get the advice that you need so that you're not making a costly decision to your business just by making a statement, you know?
Right, yeah. Yeah, every stance has a cost,
Yeah.
but silence does too. So, as leaders, you have to consider all kinds of costs, positive ones and negative ones on both sides.
Yeah. Neutral's not really neutral anymore, is it?
It's not. But visibility without responsibility isn't leadership either. The future of business isn't about avoiding politics altogether, but I think it's going to be about navigating it with intention, honesty, integrity. And I do like the word you said earlier, transparency. Like, I
Yeah.
think we're going to have to be seeing more transparency in leadership and businesses and practices, all of that.
Yeah. And, you just got to be okay with the fact that, we can't please everyone. And I think that's something, especially someone who worked in customer service for a decade or more, cannot make everyone happy. The best you can
Mhm.
do is just align it, speak the truth, follow through, be transparent, and continue serving the product that you've been trying to serve, but just, good luck with
Mhm.
that. And hopefully you're as transparent as you can because we're in the age where everybody knows everything now within 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So,
And
and I don't think
everyone's
we're
gonna have an
going back.
opinion about it.
Yep.
Everyone's gonna have an opinion about it.
And honestly, I think this is just the world we live in now. So,
It is.
Yeah. So I'm limiting my
Oh,
social media to like 10 minutes a day. I can't take it anymore.
what a conversation we had today.
Yeah. I'm glad. I needed to get that out because, you start seeing stuff. It's
I'm sure we could get on and on and on.
for like 3 hours.
I know.
But nobody wants a
Thank you
podcast that's
all.
3 hours.
No,
Sorry.
that's too long. That's excessive. But thank you all for joining us, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Also, make sure that you are connected with us on our socials so that you can always be a part of the conversation and never miss an episode. You can find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Threads, Patreon, and of course, be sure to check out the show on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. We hope that you'll continue joining us and share with your friends. Next time,
All of
bring a
them.
friend with you. But we hope you continue joining us for Not a Lonely Coffee Break. Again, we are your hosts. I'm Maddie.
I'm Megan.
Cheers,
Cheers.
queer.